And hello there. Welcome to the first chapter of my live reading of the Toy Soldier Saga novella Homefront from the On the Horizon box set. And thank you for joining me. This is the first time I've done it, so sorry I'm a couple minutes late getting started. I've got to do some messing around with stuff going on here in the background, and then I will be ready to start. Oh, I'm just waiting for. I want to turn off the rest of my windows because I happen to know that it interferes with reception, right? Because my poor little computer can only handle so much memory. Yeah, well, right. Close it down. Okay, are we back? Sorry for all that nonsense. That's not going to happen next time. All right. So I guess I will get started. Go ahead a bit here. Let's select my novel from this because it's easiest. I'm also going to run my voice recorder as a backup since I intended to hopefully cobble together an audiobook out of this just to make sure that everything is running smoothly. So I hope you can hear me right now. Okay, Homefront by Diane Morrison. A Toy Soldier Saga novella. They were the ones left behind, but war affects everyone. This is my blurb at the beginning. Picking up the pieces of their shattered lives, the family and loved ones of a space pilot killed in the war discover a terrible threat to their homeworld. Can they unite their divided planet in time to save it? This book is dedicated to all those who maintain the home front while those they love go off to fight. I'll do that again. This book is dedicated to all those who maintain the home front while those they love go off to fight. The courage of a soldier is admirable, but so is yours. Special thanks to An Angel's Life, G-Man number 99, J.I. Rogers, Joshua Robertson, Michael Baker, Reading Indie, Sarah Berman, Serena J. Fleming, and Shakira Dunn for all your support. Because I love you guys and you're awesome, and thank you for being my patrons so it's possible to do this. I really appreciate it. Prologue. Battles great and terrible, small and bitter, raged across known space as the wars of elves and orcs played out their legacy of hatred across the stars themselves. Epics would be written, songs would be sung, but wars are fought by real people with loves and families and homes. They were the ones left behind, but war affects everyone. Part 1. Life Goes On. Chapter 1. The Heart is Not Finite. The day of the wedding is here at last. Nerissa Elkshorn sits before her vanity glass while Selena and Tyelete comb out and braid her flaxen hair, contemplating her reflection. Try as she might, she cannot get the tinge of sadness to leave her sea-green eyes, though the golden sparkles shine merrily. She is happier than she has been in a long time. Still, she can't help but think of Shandar as she runs her fingers over the filigreed amber tear charm he gave her. How long ago? 7 years? Is that right? She thinks maybe it is. He would want you to be happy, Selena Sunfall, home for the first time in years, reassures her. Her younger friend has grown into a fine elven maiden, Nerissa thinks to herself, although she's certain the girl will be the death of her father. She imagines that Vice Admiral Lord Sunfall can't help but be pleased that his daughter has chosen not to join the Avalonian Imperial Navy after it devoured his son. But he can't help but he can't keep starfaring out of her blood, and she is working for various merchant traders with morals as questionable as their cargo. At least, Nerissa sighs to herself, it keeps her out of the war. Lorath is not a spacefarer, thank Arianrod. Even though the Oakhart family has a long tradition of Navy service, he has chosen to turn his swordslinger's craft to home defense. His view of the Navy has, like hers, been soured by the deaths of so many people he loved, like his older brother Garen and his father, and Shandar and Yathar, who were his childhood rivals, but who had become his friends. "You look great," Tyelate Vesper reassures her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. Tyelate is the picture of a prim gold elven officer, with her fiery hair pulled back into a neat braid, and her rapier polished and swaying from her slim hip at a jaunty angle. Her red and silver marine dress uniform is spotless. Nerissa knows that sparkling uniform is why people refer to elven marines derisively as toy soldiers, but she has always liked it. You would never know by the way she walks that one leg is a mithril prosthetic, except that she has forgone the enchantment that prevents it from clumping on a deck when she takes a step. She likes the sound, she says. It makes people nervous. And certainly when Tyelate treads into a room with her ever-present cob pipe champed between her teeth and a scowl on her brow, she commands authority. Her youthful face seems to give the lie to the row of medals at her breast, but Nerissa knows how real they are. She is already the exec aboard the corvette Epona, and the word is that she's on the fast track to advancement, and the Mithril of the Navy are considering her for a captaincy. "Thanks," Nerissa says with a smile at her friend. The traditional amber jewelry, intended to honor Freya, goddess of love, probably does flatter her golden complexion and the specks in her eyes, she secretly concurs. But this isn't what concerns her. Has anyone heard from Sylvia yet? Tyelate harumphs. She wasn't able to get leave. Things have been heating up in the Gornan system, I hear. Lots of orcish activity, and those Hornet ships have been sighted in numbers in the system. Who told you that? Demands Selena. Your father, she says with a grin, but I'll confess, it wasn't an officer's briefing. Nerissa is disappointed, but she understands. The war is everywhere these days. Peridot is on rations, and has been for a couple of years now. Most families have started little hobby farms, or are exercising the hunting rights their titles give them, even if they never have before. She and Lorath have organized a community garden and a commons for livestock, and even she has been practicing her long-neglected archery skills to take down the occasional coney for the stew pot. I'll get the flowers, Selena volunteers. Not being a Navy officer, she's wearing a gauzy silver dress to match Nerissa's golden one, which flatters the silver glitter in her she-blue eyes and her fair, not quite moon-elven complexion. She's starting to look a lot like her mother, Lady Selene Sunfall, who is still like a mother to Nerissa, and who kept her sane in those horrible days following Shandar's capture. Nerissa purses her lips in a grimace. Nerissa is sorry that she has not been able to be as firm a rock to the Lady Sunfall as the lady has been to her. There is a tap at the door. Before the serving girl has a chance to get there, it creaks open, and a head of tousled black hair pokes into the crack. Is this little party for girls only? He asks. If so, I'll go harass Lorath instead, but I'm not really here for him. Nerissa grins. Come on in, Blackjack, she calls, and Fistlin Goldenbow, known to everyone except his snobbish elder brother by his call sign Blackjack, strides into the room in a slightly disheveled silver pilot's uniform. Selena leaps up to hug him. He laughs aloud and embraces her in return. Spin Dizzy, Blackjack's green-furred guinea pig familiar, scampers from his customary place on the pilot's shoulder. He chitters a greeting and nibbles at her hair. "Careful, I'm dirty, I'll mess that pretty dress up," says Blackjack with a chuckle. Then he catches sight of Tyalite, grins wider, and salutes. "Commander," he says with grave formality. Rather than snapping some blue epithet at him for being so proper, Tyalite acknowledges his salute before cracking a wide smile. "Good to see you, Blackjack." Her lack of formality is a signal for him to relax. "How's tricks?" How things have changed, Nerissa thinks to herself. Orcs are keeping me busy," he admits, slouching into a chair and putting his boots up on Nerissa's father's antique coffee table. She tries not to wince. "You?" She laughs. "Working like a horse. Glad I'm stationed in the system, or I wouldn't have been able to get leave." I was afraid I was going to be stuck out near Overdark for the wedding," Blackjack agrees. "But I managed to squeak out of there in the lull. Sorry I'm a little worse for wear, though. Do I have time for a shower?" "I'm glad you made it however you came," Nerissa says happily. "But I think you could squeeze one in." "That bad, eh? Okay then, I will." He stands up. "By the way, I was given this to give to you." He hands a letter to Nerissa. She cracks the seal to find Sylvia's regretful decline of the invitation, as expected. There's more, but Nerissa stuffs it in her bodice for later. "Sorry it took so long to get here. I was held up a little." "I understand, but thanks for bringing it." He grins. "I brought Admiral Sunfall, though. He'll be along as soon as he's dealt with the bureaucrats." His dismissive and slightly smug tone communicates his view of bureaucracy. A spark of joy flares in Nerissa's heart. She clasps her hands before her excitedly. "That's great! I wasn't expecting him at all. I'm so pleased." Selena's smile is tight and nervous. "Do you think he'll want to see me?" "Don't be ridiculous. Of course your dad wants to see you," Tyalite reassures her. "Oh," Blackjack says on the way out, slapping his forehead. "Sylvia sent a package, too. I assume it's a wedding gift. I left it on the Star Singer. I'll get it once I've cleaned up." Selena shakes her head. "Same old Blackjack." "Sit your butt down here and I'll braid your hair now," Tyalite says. "Oh, the flowers!" Selena exclaims. "I'll get them first." She hops up to fetch them. Tyalite braids her long blue-black hair and then weaves star-glow flowers in. The wonderful thing about star flowers, Nerissa thinks, is that they go well with both Elfar and she complexions. Tyalite finishes off the decoration by weaving white roses into the thickest part of their braids at the nape of the neck. "There," she murmurs, satisfied at last. "It looks great." Selena admires her work by twisting in the mirror. "Now sit down and I'll do yours." Tyalite laughs. "Do I look like the kind of person who wears flowers?" "How else are you going to match the bridal party?" Nerissa counters. "At least I didn't make you wear a dress." "A good point, Alana." Tyalite sits. Lady Sunfall glides into the room. She is the plate from which her daughter is stamped, but she is as ethereal as Selena is earthly. A full-blooded she-moon elf, somehow she seems to float through the universe like a phantom, more so since her son was killed. The gauzy gown of an Aranrodian priestess flows around her like mist. "Are you almost ready, Nerissa? Your guests have begun to arrive." "You tell me, Lady Sunfall," Tyalite says, indicating the bride with an exaggerated sweep of her hand. The lady smiles. "It is bittersweet. You are absolutely beautiful, dear. I hope Lorath knows how lucky he is." "He treats her right, Mom," Selena says defensively. "I know he does." She reached out to fold Nerissa into her arms. "You deserve to be happy. You've had so much grief. And my son left you without a fare thee well, so he can hardly expect you to wait forever." She sighs and releases her. "I just wish things were different, is all." Her smile is more encouraging now. "Me too," she agrees. "But I love Lorath." "Of course you do," the lady says. The heart is not finite, you know. Tyalite clears her throat uncomfortably. Lady Sunfall insists that Shandar and Yathar yet live, and Yathar was once Tyalite's lover. Tyalite doesn't really believe it, of course. Most of Skyreach thinks that Lady Sunfall is in denial, and maybe even a little crazy, and after what happened to her son, who can blame her? And yet, Tyalite's relationships since Yathar have been nothing but a windswept trail of one-night stands and broken hearts. Someone clears his throat. The gathering turns to see Nerissa's father, Fleet Admiral Lord Elkshorn, standing awkwardly in the doorframe. His eyes seek out his daughter and light upon her with joy. "How do I look, Daddy?" she asks in a quiet voice. He coughs. "Radiant. Absolutely radiant." She smiles, relieved. She knows her father does not approve of her marrying a she-elf, and she is afraid that he will say something to ruin this beautiful day. But whatever else he might think, he holds his tongue. Since Shandar and Yathar disappeared into the night, he has been noticeably silent about such things. When she finally announced that she and Laroth were seeing each other, Nerissa expected shouting, recriminations, perhaps banishment. Instead, Lord Elkshorn swallowed sharply and choked out in a strangled tone, "As long as you're happy." She suspects that he feels guilty about the boys' deaths, as if he has somehow caused them by his opposition to Shandar and Nerissa's relationship. That saddens her. Why is she so melancholy on her wedding day? She shakes it off. "Thank you, Dad." She smiles shyly. "Your mother would be proud," he sighs in return. "I only wish she were here to see this day." "She'll be watching from the Summerlands, sir," says Tyalite. Lady Goldenbough, Yathar's mother, comes over to greet her friend Lady Sunfall. "Congratulations, dear," she says to Nerissa. "I wish you both much happiness together." "Thank you for coming, Phelan." Lord Elkshorn smiles back, taking her hands courteously. Nerissa smiles too. "Yes, thank you." She is glad to see Lady Goldenbough. Though shy and introverted, she is a fixture in Nerissa's life and a source of quiet comfort. But if she's here... "What's he doing here?" Nerissa hisses in her father's ear as she spots Lady Goldenbow's husband, the Rear Admiral, taking tea with an elf she does not recognize. "Bad etiquette not to invite the Mithril to my daughter's wedding, my dear," Lord Elkshorn explains. "You didn't have to invite him," she sputters. As she does so, Lord Goldenbough looks up, and his eyes take note of her. "Ah, the blushing bride!" Admiral Goldenbough exclaims as he stands to offer a bow that is the picture of Alfar propriety. Nerissa offers a stiff and formal bow in return. She doubts very much that she is blushing, but perhaps the angry flush of her cheeks mimics that. "May I present Captain Lothar Vallis of the Draconian System Fleet?" "Charmed," the captain says with an easy smile and a formal bow. He is a handsome, red-headed sun-elf with interesting hazel eyes and a rapier at his hip. He carries himself with that grace and fluidity of motion that Nerissa associates with sword singers. "Congratulations." Not wanting to be impolite, Nerissa returns it. "Thank you, sir. What business brings you here to the Talesian system, Captain?" "My admiral sent me with a message for Admiral Goldenbough, but I'm sure it would be very rude for me to drag him away from your wedding, so I've come here to discuss it. Your father extended me an invitation as a courtesy. I hope that's all right." "Of course," she says brightly, then adds in a hopeful tone, "But if Navy business requires your attention, I of course understand that duty must come first." Neither one takes the bait. Her smile evaporates. Why can't they just have a nice quiet wedding? She regrets not taking Laroth up on his offer to run away and declare their vows naked under the full moon, which would have been a perfectly legitimate wedding in she tradition. Of course, you could probably consider any one of the other small worlds in the roots of the tree of life they called Yggdrasil Sprout to be a moon of Peridot, so which one would be appropriate would be the question. Seeing that the captain seems to expect her to say something else, she adds through gritted teeth, "Please make yourself welcome, if you'll excuse me." She bows to them both and rejoins her friends. "Who's the new face?" Tyalite asks with a tilted eyebrow. Nerissa snorts. "Some friend of Lord Goldenbow's." Well, that doesn't well, that doesn't do much to recommend him, does it?" she chortles as she taps the ashes and dawdle out of her pipe. Nerissa doesn't answer. She can see the two Alfar talking, and Lord Goldenbow seems agitated. Captain Lothervalis looks smug. This is an odd state of affairs. What could a mere captain have to be smug about that would irritate an admiral? When he looks up, she follows his gaze. For just a moment Nerissa sees Shondar, but this is hardly surprising. He'd borne a distinct resemblance to his Sun-Elven Elfar father, though his eyes were blue, while the admiral's were amber, and his complexion had been a moonstone shade, right between the lunar pale of his mother's and the admiral's solar gilt. Lord Sunfall squints into the sunlight with a fierce gaze more accustomed to the stark sun and soft gloaming of the void than the haze of atmosphere. "I hope I'm not too late?" "Admiral on deck," Tyalite grins, and all the military personnel present salute him. Nerissa smiles. He must be a great commander, she muses. Anyone who's ever been part of his crew still loves him. The admiral nods, but then he sees his wife and daughter and smiles. It is not a face accustomed to smiling, so the expression is illuminating. "Selina, I'm so glad you came." Selina, relieved, throws herself on him as if she were a small child of 20 again. The admiral laughs and swings her around, displaying the unusual physical strength his son inherited. Nerissa remembers being swung around like that. Lorath doesn't do that, at least not as often. He clasps his lady's hand and comes to her side. Nerissa privately thinks that their son would be surprised by such an open display of affection as their passionate kiss. One thing Yathar and Shondar's death has taught them all, she broods, is to appreciate the time they have with the people they love, because they just might be gone tomorrow. "I've missed you both," he says to his wife. Well, that's what she's here for, isn't it? She loves Shondar, and now she loves Lorath, and he just might be gone tomorrow too. They need to celebrate their love now, not someday. She wishes that she'd carried Shondar's baby to term, because then he would have had a legacy. But Selina is young yet, and so is she, and she looks forward to the babies that she and Lorath will bring into the universe. She intends to have a bunch of them. "I assume that's the groom there?" Captain Lothervalis indicates with his pipe stem. Nerissa's heart dances as Lorath Oakheart appears at the arbor, draped in the traditional golden robes and flowered headdress of a wedding. "Sorry, am I late?" He is tall, but not quite as tall as Lord Sunfall, and handsome, all bright forest green eyes and night black hair and glowing moon-elven smile. His rapier's jeweled hilt sparkles in the sunlight. Blackjack, his hair still wet, is at his heels, shaking his head at some private joke. His eyes fix briefly on his elder brother, Lord Goldenbow, and glaze over in annoyance. Nerissa comes to her betrothed and to take his hand. "You're just in time, my love." Missing in action. 6 years earlier. Nerissa would never forget the day the world ended. She was home and visiting her father when she saw the cutter coming in from the Arianrod's Pride. She headed to the dockyards to greet Lord Sunfall, but the look on his face was vacant. It frightened her immediately. "What's happened?" Nerissa demanded. The Vice Admiral looked at her without seeing her for a moment. Then recognition dawned. Suddenly Nerissa was terrified. "Nerissa," he said in a hollow voice, "you'd better come with me." Nerissa fell in step with him, though part of her was shrieking, "No, you don't want to know!" They made their way in silence to the Sunfall Manor. He pushed open the door and came in. "Daddy!" Selina yelled happily, and she ran to embrace him. But that same dark look stopped her in her tracks. "What's wrong?" Lady Sunfall and Lady Wintermist, her mother, stood up. "What is it, Rouavel?" Chandar's grandmother asked, her mouth drawn into a thin line. Lord Sunfall looked down, and Nerissa noticed now a paper and something bright and metallic in his hands. Her heart froze. He cleared his throat. "The Queen's dirk has gone down with all hands," he said. His voice broke at the end. A trembling hand crept up to Lady Sunfall's mouth, and something like a soft sigh escaped her. "God's damn," swore Lady Wintermist. Selina's eyes were huge and horrified. Nerissa found herself on the floor, her legs simply collapsing underneath her. "You're sure?" Chandar's grandmother pressed. "They found what was left of her in the Windsmere system," the Vice Admiral confirmed, his face pale. Nerissa clutched her shaking head and moaned. A wave of unreality washed over her. There had been so many nightmares since Chandar and Yathar had left for the war. Was it possible this was only a dream? "No," Lady Sunfall said then. This was not denial. This was something else. "No," she repeated. "They're not dead. I would know." She met her husband's eyes. Lost, perhaps, but not dead. Her eyes were dark and veiled. Lord Sunfall's lips thinned. Then he nodded once in acceptance. "All right. I will hold out hope then." Nerissa agreed. She couldn't, believe they had been killed, not when Lady Sunfall's legendary intuition said otherwise. She touched her amber tear charm and burst into tears. Lady Sunfall put her arms around her, and soon the whole family was fastened together like a bundle of sticks, finding strength together. They sat at dinner in silence, and nobody ate much, poking at the food on their plates as though it were compost. Lady Wintermist harumphed over her food, and her mouth chewed on unsaid words. But finally her resistance broke, and she demanded of her son-in-law, "I would hear whatever you can tell us, Rouavel. Is there anyone here who would not?" Silence greeted her assertion. Nerissa knew that no, she did not really want to hear the details. There was no way in which that could be a good thing. And yet, there lingered the desperate, nagging doubt. What if there was something in the details that triggered knowledge that only she possessed? It was nothing but raw cowardice not to bear the burden of knowing, and Nerissa knew that if she could have done something, and she learned of it later, she would never forgive herself. 4 pairs of stony eyes met Lord Sunfall's hawk-like gaze. He looked at his hands and forced the words from his mouth. The remains of the dirk were found near the edge of the system, like they had just come through the wormhole. There was nothing left but flinders scattered over the void. It took a week to comb the wreckage. We've accounted for 30 dead. As in, Lady Wintermist interrupted, they found enough of 30 bodies to account for them, but the rest are either missing, or you can't tell for sure who they were. He nodded slowly as Nerissa turned faintly green. He bit his lip and then turned to meet his wife's eyes. "We found Yathar's arm." Lady Sunfall sighed sadly, and Nerissa made a hiccuping little beep. But Deliana Wintermist was not discouraged. "Did you find the rest of him?" she demanded ruthlessly. "No," Lord Sunfall admitted. "Then we don't know that he's dead," she said, as though that decided everything. "What else do you know?" "Garin Oakhart is dead," the Vice Admiral informed them in a grim tone. "We know that for sure." Nerissa hiccuped and burst into tears again. Lady Sunfall looked down at her hands folded in her lap. "The Oakharts will find that very hard," she quavered. "Have they been informed?" "Someone is doing that right now." Deliana bit her bottom lip unconsciously, hard enough to draw blood. "Are they able to confirm, Chandar?" There was only the slightest tremor in her voice. As in, thought Nerissa with a gasp, Did they find enough of Shondar's body to confirm that he was dead? Her breath started hitching in her throat. Lord Sunfall shook his head. No. He cleared his throat. All they found was this. He held up the metal object that Nerissa had noticed underneath the papers. She recognized it right away. It was Shondar's pocket watch, the one his father had given him when he'd become a cabin boy. It was frozen at 6 minutes after 6 of the clock. Something black had congealed at its clasp. She didn't want to know what it was. "May I see that, please?" Lady Sunfall asked in a wavering voice. Lord Sunfall reluctantly stretched out his arm, and she took it into her hand. Her eyes closed as she focused inward. Nerissa found herself holding her breath. After a few moments, Lady Sunfall pitched forward, and the watch fell from her grasp as her hand just let go. It bounced when it landed on the wood floor, and some of that black substance cracked and flaked off. Tears flowed freely from Lady Sunfall's eyes and ran in rivulets down her face. "Yathar was thrown overboard when the ship lurched," she told the family, "and Shondar's leg was broken, but as of that moment they were both still alive." "Maybe they were both thrown free," said Selena, who had been silent up to that point, "and picked up when the Fomorians were looking for survivors." They all turned to stare at her at length. Hope crept into Ruavel Sunfall's eyes. "That seems very likely. That seems very likely indeed." He smiled just a little, and Nerissa grasped Hope with desperate, drowning hands. Nerissa tossed and turned and tried for sleep that night, but failed. She spent much of the night weeping, seemingly at random, and much of the next day as well. She tried to go to school, but found she was unable to concentrate. For 2 hours she stumbled over the lessons, lost the thread of the lecture entirely, and warded off the pitying stares of her classmates who looked away when she looked directly at them. Worst of all, Professor Lord Goldenbough did not seem in the least bit bothered by his son's disappearance, maiming, and possible death. He just pounded on and on with the lesson like a trip hammer. Finally, Nerissa could take it no longer, and she picked up her books and walked out without a word. She did not know it then, but she would not return for years. Nerissa didn't know where she was going, but she found herself at the dockyard staring into the sky, hoping against hope that she might yet see Shondar's ship coming in. She resolved that she would sit at the docks and wait for him, so that she would be the first thing they would see when they came home. She watched without doing anything else, like a bride awaiting her suitor at a window. Tears leaked from her eyes sometimes, spurred on by almost random triggers. The sight of a fighter landing, elves in navy uniforms leaving ships, and worst of all, the sight of someone else's amber tear charm. The sun rose and set, and there was no sign of them. She returned the following morning, and the next, and the next. Thus ends Chapter 1. And I will return tomorrow with Chapter 2 at approximately the same time. I don't know if I'm going to re-upload this video after I've cut the first couple of seconds. I might. And in the meantime, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again.